Welcome to the adult forum for this morning. We have one of our favorite lecturers back again today, member of the congregation, Professor Emeritus in Old Testament from Lutheran Seminary, and he's going to be speaking on Psalms, Psalm 51 today, and he has a helper by the name of Ben. Ben, are you here? Stand up, please. Ben is a grandson. He has asked me to tell you about two books on the Psalms you might be interested in. One is called Psalms for Sojourners. Any comments on that, Jim?
Fine book.
And this one by somebody by the name of James Limburg. It's called Psalms. Are you selling those today, or?
I didn't bring any with
Didn't bring anything, okay.
Amazon.
Should be interesting. He's brought along ping pong balls and a slingshot and Ben with him. Little known talent that he has, he's quite a jazz trombonist, but he tells me he's let that slide. Jim, please come along. Let's sing. Oh, we're going to sing, okay. Yeah.
Psalm 51 is used in the liturgy of the church. It's in the hymn book. It's the yellow sheet, right? Look on the yellow sheet, and Martha happily is playing the piano. So let's sing through this. This is right out of Psalm 51. Gracious God, we need new hearts, clean hearts, pure hearts. Bless us, be with us, enlighten us as we hear these ancient words. Let them be for us words of life. Amen. Amen. All right, well, here we go. I wanted to point out one thing. Ash Wednesday is coming up, and if you look in the front of the hymn book, all of the texts are listed, and in all three series of texts for Ash Wednesday, the psalm is 51. That's why when Bob asked me to do something, I thought a perfect time for Psalm 51. So that's what we're going to do today. I called it heart trouble. I'm not talking about Gonda 6, isn't that where they do that sort of thing? But I'm talking about the song that we just sang and the psalm, which says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God." Now, a couple of things before we really get rolling here. We're going to look at that psalm in just a moment. And so if you look at the blue sheet, you will see it says Psalm 51 down there. You see that? Psalm 51 on the blue sheet, and it says, we're just going to read right through it and make some comments along the way. And may I just advise any of you who have an aversion to slingshots, remember David was a slingshot star, so just keep your eyes open. We'll give you plenty of warning, and you can see on the board we've had an artist come in and do a rendition of, who is that? Who do you suppose that is? Goliath. Who is it? The group isn't real sure. I'm a little... Old Testament is not studied as much as it should be. Okay, well, let's just take a look at this. First, there is a little introduction in the psalm, and this is actually in the Bible itself. It says, to the leader. Now, what does that mean? We're talking here about Bob Geary. It says this psalm is dedicated to the leader. Then it gives you a little hint here. It says it's a psalm of David when the prophet Nathan came to him after he had gone into Bathsheba. Well, we're going to get into that story a little bit, but the hero of this story, in many ways, is going to be David. Now, you can start to get ready here. We don't have David with us, but if you look at 1 Samuel 16:17, it tells you that David was hired to be the personal bodyguard for the king at the time, who was Saul. And the first thing that he had to do was to deal with a guy that was causing all sorts of problems for the king, namely a guy named Goliath. Now, if you look in you can do this, just Google Goliath. This was a surprise to me. 10 feet tall. He's a great big tall guy. We read stories about him. For example, if you look at the yellow sheet here, take a look at the yellow sheet again. You see that it says 17. After him, Nathan rose up, and then it says David. Here's the way David is remembered in the book of Sirach. What is Sirach? Sirach is one of the apocryphal books. What are apocryphal books? Who can tell us? What are they? Extra books, exactly. They are books, and Luther says in his translation, they are not part of the Bible, but they're good and useful to read. How many of you have on your reading the Bible schedule Sirach? How many of you are reading Sirach in your homes? Les Hornfeld is. He's the only one. And I won't ask him to give us your impressions, yes, of Sirach. I ran into him the other day, and he was saying, have you seen that in Sirach? Here it is. It says, as the fat is set apart from the offering of well-being, so David was set apart from the Israelites. Listen about David. He played with lions as though they were goats, with bears as though they were lambs of the flock. In his youth, did he not kill a giant and take away the people's disgrace? When he whirled the stone in the sling and struck down the boasting Goliath. And here you see our artist's rendition of Goliath right here. Great big guy, 10 feet. How tall is this ceiling? Who can tell us? What is it? What? 9-foot ceiling? Well, Goliath is bigger than this, according to the number of cubits and so on, if you figure it out. But David, then, the first thing he had to do was to deal with this Goliath, who would walk down and make fun of the God of the Israelites. So David said, let me take care of him. So what did he do? First of all, we read about David and his slingshot. He killed all kinds of wild animals and so on. But the other thing that David could do, well, let's read the story about it. And if you, Ben, you can come up here. Where's Ben? We don't have David, but we have Ben with us. And he is not a slingshot expert, and he doesn't have 5 smooth stones. It says in the Bible, he got 5 smooth stones from the creek, and here are some, take your slingshot. Here are some smooth stones, and we were over at Ben's house the other night, and I said, can you make us a slingshot? Yes, of course. So he went to Google And here is a kind of slingshot that, hold it up there, Ben, that David might have used. Ben, by the way, as you see from his shirt, is a student at Lourdes, a Lutheran high school here in Rochester. Okay, Ben, tell us about making this slingshot. You got anything to say about it?
We used the finest materials of rope and t-shirt rags.
That's it?
And sure.
Yeah, tell us about your when you were able to get at this. Ben spent a good deal of time on this picture of Goliath. Anything you want to say about it? Okay. Well, let's clear the space here and let Ben do his thing. Ben, do you use a slingshot in any sports? You play football, I know. You've played football. And I don't know, would it be the pitcher or what?
Well, I have extensive practice of one night.
Okay, well, here we go. And the target, of course, if you read the story, how did David do it? Where did he hit Goliath? Right in the forehead. He whacked him right there. And Ben is going to get a prize, $10 from his grandfather, if he hits that right in the forehead. So, do you need people to clear out or anything? No? All right, everybody's going to be good. Do we have a drum roll? Bob, do you have your drums with you? Where's Bob? Here's an imaginary drum roll. Yeah, everybody give him a little drum roll. Go ahead and nail that terrible Goliath. Let's see if he can do it. Here he goes. Oh, right. Check with me. I don't have my billfold with me. Okay. Excellent. So you see that when you list the syllabi, list the names on the syllabus, Ben's got his name on there. Where is that? Since now I want to read just this little section here on this blue sheet. And Noel, you've got the blue sheet.
Yeah, I do.
Upper left-hand corner, it says the Benjaminites. Can you read that for us?
Okay. The Benjaminites came together out of the town of Gilbeth to go out to battle against the Israelites. On that day, the Benjaminites mustered 26,000 armed men from their towns, besides the inhabitants of Gilbeth. Of all this force, there were 700 picked men who were left-handed.
All right, how many left-handers in this group? Put your hand up. Oh, quite a few. The heroes here are all left-handers. Did you notice that Ben was a left-hander? Did you notice that? No, he's not. Go ahead.
Everyone could sling a stone at a hair and not miss.
How about that? 700 guys could sling a stone at a hair. No, I don't have enough spare. And not miss. Now we're going to come up with what that word is in just a little bit. And the Israelites, apart from Benjamin. Well, we need somebody representing the tribe of Benjamin, and who better than somebody named Benjamin, who is right here. Now he's also part of the story because his middle name is what? David, that's correct. So Benjamin David. All right. Yeah. His middle name is Goliath. So yeah. All right. Now what I want to do is go through this story, and we've got a couple of parts here. First, a story, because it says here in the text, it says, that's this blue one, to a psalm of David when the prophet Nathan came to him after he had gone into Bathsheba. Now, this is David who has got some problems with sexual assault in his cabinet in Jerusalem. And we've got 4 verses here. How about, you're a good reader here, Noel. Why don't you read a little bit of this for us? 1 through 4. Here we go.
Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you alone, have I by sin and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence and blameless when you pass judgment.
All right, now there are in this short segment, thank you. There are in this short segment three different words for sin. The first one, blot out my transgressions. Now that word in Hebrew, if we were to take our Hebrew Bible, transgression means, it comes up in Isaiah chapter 1, children who transgress against their parents. So the idea is rebellion, to rebel against parents. And here David, who is the author of this psalm, says, I know my transgressions, my sin is ever before me. And here's what got us going with this slingshot thing. The word for sin in Hebrew, if you want to write this down, or you don't have to, but if you were interested, the word for sin is hatah, H-A-T-A-H, hatah, which means to sin. But now, when you look at Hebrew words in the Bible, and I just happen to have my Hebrew Bible with me, my job for 25 years at Luther Seminary was to teach Hebrew. So this is all the Psalms in Hebrew, and my point is this, that if you look at this in Hebrew, the verb is hatah. Now, anytime you're trying to figure out what a Hebrew word really means, it's good to go back to the non-theological original. In other words, theological words like transgress. Well, what does that mean? Well, what does it mean? Think of a child rebelling against a parent. That is to transgress. Put that in theological terms, that is when someone rebels against God. Well, guess what hatah means in its non-theological sense? What does hatah mean? And it comes up 7 times in this little thing. What do you think it means? Exactly. Ruth has got it here. Missing the mark. Hatah, or that's the exact word that's used up here where we read about these left-handed slingshotters from the tribe of Israel. So, to sin means to miss the mark. To miss the mark. Now, does that help you? David is confessing. He's saying, I know my transgressions, my rebellions, and I know against you and you only have I sinned. And here's that word, hatah. All right, well, we go a little bit further, continuing with the psalm, and verses 6 through 13, and here I said, enter. I wrote some notes here, I'm trying to stick to them. Enter the husband who is an immigrant. And well, look at what David does. Here's the problem with David. Who would like to read? Somebody from over here? Who wants to read? I'll give you this microphone. Oh, okay, Ancy? You don't want to read. Okay, at least her husband doesn't want her to read. So, here we go. Pastor Hornfeld. Start reading with about verse 6, is that? Indeed, I was born guilty.
Indeed, I was born guilty, a sinner when my mother conceived me. You desire truth in the inward being. Therefore teach me wisdom in my secret heart. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. How far do you want me to go?
That's good right there.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at what is this business about Nathan? Well, now let's go back over to the other side of the blue sheet where it says David and Bathsheba. I'm going to read a little bit. It says this, in the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites. They were right across the river from Jerusalem. They besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. In the springtime, the armies go out on campaigns, and they try to conquer and add to their possessions and fight between, this should really belong to North Korea or South Korea or whatever. But David stayed home. Why did he stay home, do you suppose? He didn't go out with the army.
He had a girlfriend.
Oh, had a girlfriend? I see. Yeah. Why did he stay home? Why, when Ben asked me to go ice fishing a while back and it was 10 below zero, why did I stay home? David is getting on in years now. So he just stays home and he lets Joab, who is his trusted general, go out and do the fighting. Okay, so it happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking about on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. Now, the text goes exactly like this. The Hebrew says the woman was very beautiful. Very beautiful. And in Hebrew it's ma'od. That means very. I was in a Hebrew class where little kids were learning Hebrew and the teacher kept going, Tov ma'od, Tov ma'od, Tov ma'od, Tov ma'od. What was she saying?
Very good.
Very good. See? Phil, I'm going to ask him a question. I was going to ask who, well, okay. Excellent. All right, this is, and she was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman. Who is that? He said it was reported, oh, this is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Who is this? Oh, Bathsheba. So David sent some messengers to get her. She came to him. He lay with her. Now she was purifying herself after her period. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David a message. There's a knock on the door, or the telephone rings, and she's got a two-word message in Hebrew. Chara anoki. What does that mean? I'm pregnant. Now, what's David going to do? Well, why don't you pick it up here a little bit for us, Noel? I'm picking on you.
So David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the people fared.
Yeah, he says, how are things going out on the battlefield? Small town, small talk.
And how
And
the
how
war.
are things going out there? Anyway, I got a little program going, bring people home, cycle them home.
Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. Uriah went out of the king's house and then followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept in the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord and did not go down to his house.
He won't. David says, I'm sending some wine and I have a nice evening with your wife. So, just go back down there. But what did David do? He won't do it because he knows that all the soldiers, he's a real soldier. Everybody else has to sleep outside and he won't go home and enjoy a nice glass of wine with his wife. Well, so when they told David that, here we go. Thank you. Noel, go ahead.
Okay? You have just come from a journey. Why did you not go down to your house? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah remain in booths.
Yeah, they're all sleeping in pup tents out there. Booths, okay?
And my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing.
He is a good soldier. He's a foreigner, by the way. He is a Hittite, but he won't do it. He won't go back and enjoy the furlough. Then David said to Uriah, "Remain here today. Tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem. On the next day, David invited him to eat and drink in his presence, made him drunk. In the evening, he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of the Lord, but he didn't go down to his house. Well, now the next section. Now the plot really thickens. Who wants to read starting with verse 14? Okay. Death of Uriah. Okay.
In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it to the hand of Uriah.
Okay, he gives a note to his general, and he sends this memo, let's call it a memo. He sends a memo to Joab, his general, to General no, wait a minute. I keep getting these characters mixed up. Sends a note to Uriah. Go ahead.
In the letter he wrote, "Set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him, so that he may be struck down and die." As Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant warriors. The men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite was killed as well.
Uriah is killed in the battle. Well, what did the note say that David sent? What do you suppose it said? Make it look like an accident. Exactly. You know what to do. And Joe, oh yeah, I got the deal here. Go ahead, continue.
Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting. And he instructed the messenger, "When you have finished telling the king all the news about the fighting, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, 'Why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall?' Who killed Abimelech, son of
Jerubbaal?" He says,
Thank
remember
you.
there was a woman that threw a millstone on him and killed him? Why did you go so near the wall? And then he says, "Oh, by the way, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too." Oh. Further, continue.
So the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, "The men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead
Oh,
also."
Uriah is dead. David hears this, and what does he do? Continue.
David said to the messenger, "Thus you shall say to Joab."
Yeah. This you shall say, "Don't let this bother you. One day one is killed, and another day another is killed. Press your attack on the city and overthrow it." Well, don't let it bother you. That's the way it is in warfare. Some are killed one day, some another. Well, when the wife of Uriah, what's her name again? Bathsheba, heard that her husband was dead, she made lamentation for him. When the mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. End of story, right? It's time to quit. We'll go back home, and we'll come back next week and see what's up. All right? Wait a minute. Who wants to read? I'll read. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said, "Well, you know, let me tell you a story." Soren Kierkegaard loves this, and he has a nice sermon on this text. He says, "Let me tell you a story. There were two men in a certain city. One was rich, the other poor. The rich man had a lot of flocks and herds. The poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had brought up. He brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children, used to eat from his cup, lie in his bosom. Now there came a traveler to the rich man. He was loath to take one of his own flock, but he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest. David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. Then Nathan looks David in the eye and says to him, you're the guy. Oh. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel. I rescued you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house and so on. And now you have killed Uriah the Hittite. Well, end of the story. End of the story. But now what follows? This is, now we go back to the other side of this blue sheet where we have David praying. David praying, saying, have mercy on me, O God. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions, and so on. Well, here then is the prayer. And what's David's prayer? What's the content of it? What's it about? Somebody summarize it for us. What do we got here? What is he really asking in this prayer? Yeah, forgiveness. We went down, we read some of this. We went down to 9, hide your face from my sins, blot out my iniquities. And now let's read this together, these next 3 verses. Here we go. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence. Do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and sustain me a willing spirit. Then I will teach transgressors, that same word, your ways, and sinners, here's that slingshot word, chata, will return to you. Deliver me from bloodshed, O God. Well, then the psalm ends with verses 15 through 17. Let's just read through those. Who would like to read? Somebody over here. Let's read 15 through 17, please.
O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. For you have no delight in sacrifice. If I were to give a burnt offering, you would not be pleased. The sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise.
All right. Well, this is a psalm for people who are having heart trouble. And it doesn't send them up to Ganda 6, is that what that's called? The place over there. It doesn't send them up there. But it says that restore to me the joy of... I have no delight in sacrifices. The sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. God, you will not despise. Well, I could give you examples. Pastor Hortfed could give you examples. Many of you here could. Of people whose hearts have been broken. Whether it's a death. We live over in the waters, and we heard the day before yesterday, one more death, and the survivors were having a very bad time. So what is there to pray? Create in me a clean heart. Restore to me the joy of my salvation. Sustain in me a willing spirit. Why do you suppose this psalm is assigned for Ash Wednesday? Ideas. Why Ash Wednesday?
are going to die.
Yeah.
And you're asking for.
A reminder that you're going to die, right? Somebody over here said something about. Yeah. Phil, spell that out just a little bit.
Contrition. C-O-N. Thank you for helping me. Well, yeah, literal, definitely. I see contrition as actually being physical expression of kneeling or bowing, prostrate on the ground. And that's what I imagine as an action behind this. And it's like the end of Job, where you just admit you're in ashes and God is great.
Put the microphone on.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah.
I'm contrite now for not speaking up. Yeah, I see contrition as almost in a physical way of reducing oneself before God, the way Job repents in ashes. Is that what you're hinting at, Jim?
Well, yeah, that's what I think. Contrition. So that's when we have Ash Wednesday services here, we have a physical sign of contrition, do we not?
Yeah.
What's that? The ashes. I grew up in Redwood Falls, southwest Minnesota, as did Sophia. Where is she? Sonia. Yeah. Sonia and I grew up in Redwood Falls. And I can remember the first time I came home on my bicycle from doing my paper route. I was about in maybe 6th or 7th grade. And going by the Catholic Church, which I did every single morning about 6:45. Here I went by the church and people were coming out with black marks on their forehead. And I got home and I said, what in the world are the Catholics doing? You know, we were always somewhat suspicious of whatever, as good Lutherans, whatever was going on. And I explained to my parents, and they talked about Ash Wednesday, and we did not at that time in our Lutheran church do such a thing. But that ashes, the symbol, and that comes up in part of the funeral service, right? Les, what do you say at a funeral with ashes?
Dust to dust.
Yeah.
Shall return.
Dust to dust. You were made out of dust, and you will return. Well, anything else? Well, that's Psalm 51. And what I want to say is that question or comment? Somebody over here? Yes.
Yeah.
Barbara.
Yeah, I just love this Create in Me. When I was growing up, that was sung after the sermon all the time.
Oh, part of the liturgy every Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah. Create in me. Interestingly, if you hear the word create, it appears one other place, 2 clusters in the Old Testament. Where does create appear? Genesis 1.
Genesis,
Yeah. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, right?
Yeah.
Create in me a clean heart, O God. I can't, use all that Hebrew that I've got stuffed in my head. Nobody wants it. Anyway, create in me a clean heart. There are also in Isaiah 40 through 55 or so lots of occurrences of create. And interestingly, every time you look at this verb, the only subject of the verb is always God. Only God can bara, create. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Create in me a clean heart. Only God can do that. Well, and you use this, I think it used to be part of the Lutheran service every week, did it not?
Well, that's what.
Yeah, create in me a clean heart. Yeah.
Missouri Synod anyhow did it. I don't know about you guys.
Missouri Synod did it. Well, good for them, I say. Yeah, terrific. We love the Missouri Synod. Well, anything else? What is it? Are we getting near the...
Still got 5 minutes?
Yeah, any other comments? Anybody want to say something?
Anybody? When did this all get connected with
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, Phil
Can you
says...
repeat the question?
Yes, we repeat the question. Remember that program, It Pays to Be Ignorant? What do the letters US stand for on a United States mailbox? Would you repeat the question, please? That was It Pays to Be Ignorant. Pardon me for slipping into nonsense. The question was, when did this get associated with David? And it was, if you look at some of the older commentators, they will all say, well, of course, this was not originally part of the psalm. This is a later addition, so we don't want to have anything to do with it. But the way people are studying psalms nowadays is to say, wait a minute, it's probably not in the very oldest texts, although it's in the oldest Hebrew text that I have there. It's not in the oldest text. But nonetheless, we should pay attention to it because it points us to a way in which the psalm was used. So you can learn something by looking at these. And there are, I think, 7 penitential psalms. This is one of them. And if you look at these psalms and then read what the heading says, you'll learn something. So that's kind of the more modern way of studying the Psalms.
Questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
Nice choir we've got.
Psalm 32.
Yes.
Psalm 30. I thought Psalm 32 was probably one of the strong.
We're going to go, as it was said here, we're going to go to Psalm 32 next week. And I gave the title for this psalm, Happiness Is. Psalm 32 is all about happiness when forgiveness has been received. Now, I picked up a book at the Mayo Clinic where it's down, you all know where that is, I think, in this group. Our son Paul is rolling his eyes over here. But there's a new book, and it's just called Happiness, which I got, and I cannot tell you the author.
Dr. Sood.
Yeah, there we go.
Ahmed Sood.
Right. And I'm going to bring that book along next time because this is a book about happiness. And in yesterday's Tribune, thanks to my good wife, she pointed out that there's a huge, big article, the most popular course being taught at Yale University now is a course on happiness. So that's what we're going to look at, and that comes up as one of the texts for the Psalms in Lent.
That was on the news the other evening.
About happiness?
The Yale course.
At Yale.
So do we bring slingshots next week?
BYOS, yes, bring your own slingshot. Okay, I think we're about done here.
Another question?
About this gentleman named Ben up here.
Yes.
Ben, I think there's more to it than being your grandpa. You're the grandpa. He's a kicker for Lords.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
Ben is a kicker for that high school called Limburg. You want to say anything about it, Ben?
Any forecasts for next year, Ben?
Well, you're just gonna have to come out and see. I mean, should be good, but
We'll be there.
Didn't he
Okay.
get a 35-yarder?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, let's wind up. Martha, do you mind playing the piano one more time? Let's wind up with a song. We started with a song. And let's sing once again, Create in Me a Clean Heart, oh God. It's on the yellow sheets. And we can, we have to wait for Martha a little bit. Here's a setting out of the ELW hymn. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with your free spirit. Have a good week. See you next week.